The room fell silent when my father raised the DNA report above his head. He smiled like he had finally won. What he didn't know was that this birthday party wasn't going to end the way he planned. My name is Ethan Miller. I was turning 30 that night, surrounded by people who were supposed to be my family. The house was decorated with gold balloons, soft music played in the background, and a long table was filled with food I barely touched. On the surface, it looked like a celebration. In reality, it was an ambush. Growing up, I had always felt like an outsider in my own home. My parents never said it directly, but I could feel it in the way they treated me. Short conversations, cold looks, and constant comparisons to others. No matter how hard I tried, I was never enough. When I got into college on a partial scholarship, my father didn't congratulate me. He just nodded and said, "Don't embarrass us." When I graduated and started working, my mother told relatives I was still figuring life out, as if my achievements were accidents. I learned early to stay quiet, to observe, to survive. By the time I turned 30, I had built a decent life for myself. A stable career, independence, peace, or at least, that's what I thought. The party was my mother's idea. She insisted on inviting relatives I hadn't seen in years, family, friends, even people from my parents' workplace. Something about it felt wrong, but I ignored the instinct. That was my first mistake. Halfway through the evening, my father stood up and tapped his glass. Conversations died down. Every eye turned toward him. He cleared his throat, enjoying the attention. "Today," he said, "is a special day. Ethan turns 30. And before we celebrate, there's something everyone here deserves to know." My stomach tightened. He reached into a folder and pulled out a single sheet of paper. Even from across the room, I recognized it instantly. A DNA test report. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. My mother folded her arms, her lips curling into a thin smile. She had known. They had planned this together. "For years," my father continued, "we suspected something was off. And now we finally have proof." He looked straight at me. "Ethan is not biologically related to me." Gasps filled the room. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Another guest looked at me with pity. I stood frozen, not because I was shocked, but because everything suddenly made sense. The coldness, the distance, the quiet cruelty. They hadn't treated me like family because, in their minds, I wasn't. My father lowered the paper slightly, watching my reaction. He wanted to see me break, to cry, to beg, to run, but I didn't. Instead, I felt something else rising inside me. Clarity. "You see," he said loudly, "we raised him anyway, fed him, educated him, and this is how he repays us by acting like he belongs." The humiliation was intentional, surgical, public. I looked around the room. Faces avoided my eyes. Some were uncomfortable, others curious, almost entertained. No one defended me. That's when I realized something important. This wasn't just about DNA. This was about control. They wanted to strip me of identity, to reduce me to a mistake, a charity case. I took a slow breath. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't crack. "I didn't know tonight was a trial," I said calmly. My father scoffed. "You should be grateful we even kept you." The words should have destroyed me. 30 years ago, they might have, but not now, because there was something my parents didn't know, something they never bothered to ask. This DNA test? It wasn't the full story. As my father prepared to continue his speech, the front door opened behind him. The sound was soft, but it cut through the room like a blade. Every head turned. A tall man stepped inside, gray-haired, well-dressed, carrying himself with quiet authority. His eyes found mine instantly and softened. My heart skipped. My parents froze. They weren't ready for him. And in that moment, I understood. This party wasn't my humiliation. It was the beginning of the truth they had buried for 30 years. The man at the door didn't rush inside. He stepped forward slowly, like someone who knew exactly where he was and why he was there. The room stayed frozen, as if time itself had stopped to watch what would happen next. My father was the first to speak. "Who are you?" He snapped, trying to sound in control. The man ignored him. His eyes never left mine. "Ethan," he said gently. "Happy birthday." That was when I knew. Not because of his voice, not because of his face, but because of the way he said my name like it mattered. My mother's face had gone pale. Her confident smile was gone, replaced by panic she couldn't hide. "You weren't supposed to be here," she whispered. The guests exchanged confused looks. This wasn't part of the show they had come to see. The man finally turned to my parents. 30 years, he said calmly. "You really thought the truth would stay buried forever?" My father laughed nervously. "You've got the wrong house." "No," the man replied. "I've got the right son." The word son hit the room like thunder. A few people gasped. Someone dropped a glass. I felt my chest tighten, not with fear, but with something dangerously close to hope. "What is he talking about?" an aunt whispered. My father raised the DNA report again, waving it like a weapon. "This proves Ethan isn't mine. End of story." The man nodded. "You're right. He isn't yours." Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder, thicker, older, worn at the edges. "But he is mine. Silence. Not the awkward kind. The heavy kind. The kind that forces people to listen." My mother shook her head violently. "No, that's not true. You left. You disappeared." The man's expression hardened. "I was forced out. You made sure of that." I felt dizzy. Every word rewrote my past. My father stepped forward. "Even if that were true, you have no right." "No right?" the man interrupted. "You raised my son while reminding him every day that he didn't belong. You used him as proof of your generosity, then punished him for existing." My father opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The guests were no longer spectators. They were witnesses. I finally found my voice. "If you're my biological father," I said slowly, "why now?" The man turned back to me. His eyes softened again. "Because you're 30, and because they chose tonight to humiliate you publicly." He paused. "I promised myself I'd stay away unless you were in danger." My mother laughed bitterly. "Danger? We gave him everything." The man looked at her. "You gave him survival, not love." That sentence shattered something inside me. Growing up, I thought love was conditional, earned, fragile, something that disappeared the moment you disappointed someone. I didn't realize it wasn't supposed to feel that way. The man stepped closer to me and handed me the folder. Inside were documents, hospital records, old legal papers, and a DNA test dated years earlier. "I took one too," he said, quietly, privately. "I didn't want to ruin your life." I scanned the page. 99,9% match. My hands trembled for the first time that night. "So all those years," I whispered. "They knew," he said. "They always knew." Every memory rushed back. The side glances, the resentment, the way my father drank more whenever I succeeded. The way my mother reminded me I was lucky to be there. They weren't disappointed in me. They were afraid of what I represented. My father slammed the DNA paper onto the table. "This is ridiculous. He chose us. We raised him." The man met his eyes. "And tonight, you chose to destroy him." That's when something shifted. I wasn't the scared kid anymore. I wasn't the silent son. I straightened my back and looked at the room. "You invited all these people to watch me be humiliated," I said calmly. "So now you can watch something else." I turned to the man beside me. "For 30 years, I thought I didn't belong anywhere," I said. "But tonight, I learned the truth." I looked back at my parents. "You didn't expose me," I said. "You exposed yourselves. No shouting, no tears. Just truth, sharp and unavoidable. And this was only the beginning. Because what they didn't know yet was that I wasn't leaving empty-handed. Nobody clapped. Nobody spoke. The silence after my words felt heavier than anything my parents had planned. This wasn't the ending they rehearsed in their heads. This wasn't the broken son they expected to stand there, apologizing for existing. My father cleared his throat, trying to recover. "Ethan, you're emotional. This man is manipulating you." The man beside me, my biological father, smiled faintly. Funny. That's exactly what you said 30 years ago when you manipulated a terrified woman into signing papers she didn't understand. My mother snapped. Stop lying. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Court transcripts don't lie, he said calmly. The word court made my father stiffen. He reached into the folder again and pulled out another document. This one looked different, formal, official. What's that? Someone in the crowd asked. I took it from his hand and read the header. My breath caught. It was a trust document, not a small one, not symbolic. A 25-year trust, activated on my 30th birthday. My parents' faces drained of color at the same time. My father whispered, "That's impossible." "It isn't," the man said. "You just assumed you'd won." I looked up, confused. "I don't understand." He turned to me. "When I was forced out of your life, I had nothing except one thing they didn't know about." He nodded toward my parents. "A grandfather who loved you enough to plan for the long game." The room murmured. My mother shook her head violently. "No. He cut you off. He disowned you." The man laughed softly. "He cut you off. You just never noticed." That's when I finally understood who the man in the crowd was. Earlier, when everything exploded, I'd seen an elderly man sitting near the back. Quiet. Watching. I thought he was just another guest. He stood up now. Tall, steady, furious in a controlled way that scared me more than shouting ever could. "My grandfather, I warned you," he said to my parents. "I told you if you ever humiliated that boy publicly, I'd make sure the truth buried you." My father stammered, "Dad, this is a misunderstanding." My grandfather didn't even look at him. He looked at me. "Ethan," he said gently, "I'm sorry it took me this long." My throat tightened. "You knew?" He nodded. "I knew who your real father was, and I knew what they were doing to you." Someone asked, "Then why didn't you stop it?" My grandfather's jaw clenched. "Because monsters expose themselves eventually. I wanted witnesses." The trust document shook slightly in my hands. "What does it mean?" I asked. My biological father answered. "It means everything they used against you, money, status, control, was never theirs to begin with." The room erupted. Questions. Whispers. Shock. My father lunged forward. "That trust is family property." My grandfather finally turned to him. His voice was ice. It was, until you decided to make cruelty a family tradition. He faced the room. "That trust holds the estate shares, the investment accounts, and the company voting rights." Someone gasped. Another whispered, "That's most of it." My mother collapsed into a chair. My father stared at me, eyes wild. "Ethan, listen to me. We raised you. You owe us." I met his gaze. Calm. "I owed you obedience," I said. "You wanted gratitude, but you never earned respect." He slapped the table. "You're nothing without us." That was the moment everything snapped into place. I smiled. "No," I said. "I survived despite you." I turned to my grandfather. "Why give it to me?" He answered without hesitation. "Because you never asked for it, and because you endured what they couldn't control." The guests were no longer neutral. Some avoided my parents' eyes. Others stared openly. Reputations were cracking in real time. My biological father leaned in and spoke quietly. "This trust doesn't make you powerful, Ethan." I nodded. "I know. It gives you choices." I looked at my parents, small now, cornered by the truth they unleashed. "I'd choose distance," I said. "Not revenge, not rage. Distance." My mother sobbed. "You're tearing this family apart." I shook my head. "You did that long before tonight." Security had already been called, not by me, but by guests who suddenly realized they were in the middle of a scandal. As my parents were escorted away from their own party, my father turned back one last time. "This isn't over," he hissed. I met his eyes. "No," I said softly. "It finally is." And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the unwanted child. I felt like the heir they tried and failed to erase. The party didn't end quietly. By morning, the video was everywhere. Someone had recorded the entire scene, the DNA reveal. My grandfather standing up, my parents' faces as the truth crushed them. It spread faster than gossip ever could. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. Headlines didn't call it a family dispute. They called it what it was: prominent couple, exposed for decades, long deception. 30-year lie unravels at birthday celebration. My parents' phones didn't stop ringing. Mine stayed silent. I didn't post anything. I didn't comment. I didn't defend myself. Silence became my statement, and it drove them crazy. My father was the first to fall. The board meeting happened behind closed doors, but the outcome leaked within hours. He lost his voting rights. The trust transfer made it automatic. The power he'd held like a weapon evaporated with a signature he never saw coming. He came to see me that night. Not at my apartment. At the old house. I hadn't stepped inside in years. He stood in the doorway like a stranger, wearing my father's face, tired, smaller, stripped of authority. "We need to talk," he said. I didn't invite him in. "You already did," I replied. He swallowed. "The media is destroying us. Your mother's on medication. This wasn't supposed to happen." I leaned against the doorframe. "You planned a public humiliation with DNA results. What outcome did you imagine? That you'd back down?" There it was, the truth. I nodded slowly. "You miscalculated." His voice dropped. "You can stop this." I met his eyes. "How?" "Make a statement. Say it was a misunderstanding. Say you forgive us." I almost laughed. "Instead," I said, "you didn't raise me to lie well enough for that." His face hardened. "You're enjoying this." I shook my head. "No, I'm done with it." He stepped closer. "We're still your parents," I answered calmly. "You were my guardians. There's a difference." Behind him, my mother sat in the car, crying into her hands. I felt something then, not guilt, not anger, distance. Clean. Final. "I won't attack you," I said, "but I won't protect you either." He stared at me. "You think this makes you better than us?" "No," I said. "It makes me free." I closed the door. 2 days later, my mother resigned from her charity board. Sponsors pulled out. Invitations vanished. Friends stopped answering messages. The same people who'd laughed at their jokes about me now avoided eye contact. The world they curated rejected them. Quietly. My grandfather visited me that weekend. He looked older, relieved, heavy. "They'll survive," he said, "but they'll never control the narrative again." I nodded. "That's enough." He studied me. "What will you do with the trust?" I thought about it. The money wasn't intoxicating. It didn't fill the holes they left behind, but it gave me something I'd never had. "Option. I'm not keeping the house," I said. "Or the company." He raised an eyebrow. "No, I don't want reminders," I replied. "I want distance that lasts." He smiled faintly. "You sound like your real father." I met his gaze. "I'm okay with that." We restructured the assets quietly. Scholarships, independent ventures. Nothing flashy. Nothing that screamed revenge. That was the part my parents didn't understand. I didn't need to destroy them. I just needed to build without them. Weeks passed. The media moved on. New scandals replaced mine, but my parents' names never fully recovered. Once people see behind the mask, they don't forget. One afternoon, I received a letter, handwritten, from my mother. It didn't ask for forgiveness. It asked for understanding. "I did what I thought was right," she wrote. "I was afraid of losing him. I didn't think I was losing you." I folded the letter. Some explanations come too late to matter. That night, I stood on my balcony, city lights humming below. For the first time, my life felt quiet, not empty, not lonely, just quiet. My phone buzzed. A message from my biological father. "Proud of you. No pressure. No expectations. Just here." I typed back. "That's enough." I didn't need a replacement family. I needed space to become myself. And somewhere far behind me, a legacy built on lies finally collapsed. Not with a scream, but with silence. The final hearing wasn't dramatic. No shouting, no accusations, No tears, just signatures. My parents sat across the long oak table, their lawyers whispering things they already understood too late. The trust transfer was complete. The last legal thread tying me to their control snapped without a sound. My father didn't look at me. My mother did, but her eyes searched for a version of me that no longer existed. The judge spoke gently, almost apologetically. "This concludes the matter." That was it. 30 years of manipulation ended in under 10 minutes. Outside the courthouse, cameras waited. Reporters leaned forward, hungry for a statement, for anger, forgiveness, spectacle. I gave them none. "No comment," I said once, calmly. Then I walked away. That silence followed me everywhere. People expected me to do something with the win, expose them further, take public revenge, burn bridges loudly. But the truth was simpler. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. The first thing I did wasn't extravagant. I rented a small office. No name attached to mine. No family legacy. Just a clean space with light pouring in through the windows. I started working, slowly, intentionally. I funded scholarships quietly, children who'd been told they weren't worth investing in. Kids who'd heard the same words I had growing up. "You're not the priority. You're too much trouble." I made sure they heard something different. My grandfather visited one last time before moving overseas. "You could have crushed them," he said, sitting across from me with a cup of tea. "Why didn't you?" I thought about it. "Because crushing them would have meant carrying them with me," I replied. "And I'm tired of carrying their weight." He smiled. "That," he said, "is how I knew you were ready." We hugged, not tightly, not desperately, just honestly. Months passed. My parents faded from relevance. The company rebranded without their names. The charities replaced them. Their social circle quietly dissolved, no drama, just distance. That hurt them more than any public takedown ever could. One evening, I received another message from my biological father. No pressure, no demands, just an invitation. Coffee. I almost said no. Then I realized something. I wasn't afraid anymore. We met in a quiet cafe. He didn't try to explain the past away. He didn't ask for forgiveness or call himself my father. He simply said, "I'm glad you're okay." That was enough. We didn't build a fantasy relationship. We built honesty. Slow, awkward, real. And it worked. On my 31st birthday, I did something different. No party. No guests trying to impress each other. Just a few friends. Laughter. Candles that didn't feel like a countdown. As the night ended, one of them asked, "Do you regret not knowing the truth sooner?" I shook my head. "No," I said. "If I had, I might have spent my life." That was enough. We didn't build a fantasy relationship. We built honesty, slow, awkward, real. And it worked. On my 31st birthday, I did something different. No party. No guests trying to impress each other. Just a few friends. Laughter. Candles that didn't feel like a countdown. As the night ended, one of them asked, "Do you regret not knowing the truth sooner?" I shook my head. "No," I said. "If I had, I might have spent my life trying to be someone else's definition of real family." Later, alone, I stood by the window and thought about that moment, my 30th birthday. The DNA test. The humiliation they planned. They thought blood would define me. They were wrong. What defines me is this. I survived being unwanted. I grew without permission. I chose peace over revenge. The trust didn't expose the true heir. It exposed the lie. And when the lie collapsed, what remained wasn't anger or bitterness. It was clarity. I wasn't real family to people who only understood control, but I was real to myself, and that was the inheritance they could never touch.